It's about that time.
And for all those tuning in, thank you for joining us on City Views while we take a little hiatus from the studio. We wanted to continue some of our segments here while we have this downtime so that we can bring them to you on updated versions on our Tuesday night time slot. So, with that being said, I'd like to give our props, as we always do, to our sponsor of City Views, Mr. Steve Toth and Toth Insurance Agency. Thank you so much, as always, for supporting the cause. We appreciate it so very, very much. You can check them out on East Main Street at 1151 East Main Street is their address, and contact them for any of your insurance needs. In the meantime, we're going to get it cooking. That's right. What's cooking? Michelle Cook in the house with us this afternoon.
What's cooking, my friend?
You couldn't escape the long arm of the law. You know I was coming after you one way or the other.
You know what? I would have it no other way.
Well, Michelle, let's get down to it. The last 6 weeks have been very challenging for us all. And the coronavirus has affected everyone's life. And the challenges that we're facing here in our community are no different than what people are dealing with hundreds of miles away from us. You're in a very unique situation because you've been impacted by the coronavirus both personally and you have to deal with it from your legislative position from the public health perspective as well. So take this time to talk to our audience a little bit about how the coronavirus has impacted you and some of the remedies that you're contemplating in regards to implementing public safety initiatives that will help us get through this scourge.
Thank you, as always, for having me and for ensuring that our community is kept on the forefront of what's going on. You know, I wish I had a magic wand and a crystal ball to be able to say that we know that this would all go away, in 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months. And I think that that's part of what's really going on here is so much uncertainty that has people just feeling that angst of nobody knows what's next. We don't know when we're going to go back to school. We don't know when we're going to go back to work. We don't know when we're going to be able to go shopping without a face mask on or, some type of facial covering. For those people that are really panicking out there, they'd really like their hair salons and their barbershops to be open. I think that we as a society really struggle when it's times of uncertainty and you don't know what your normal day-to-day life is. And as you have discussed earlier when you did the introductions, yes, this terrible virus has affected our family directly. Unfortunately, my father-in-law had lost his life April 2nd, and it was due to a COVID complication. He was in Litchfield Woods and then was transferred from Litchfield Woods to Charlotte Hungerford Hospital and there lost his life. And I need to say, first and foremost, those folks that were with my father-in-law in his end days were just above and beyond compassionate and considerate and communicative to the best of their abilities to ensure that we had all of the information that they had, recognizing that their situations were then still, then and now, uncertain. That, it's not normal for somebody that's on the medical front line to learn something as you're going along. That's usually a rare circumstance, and this has become the norm for them. And you've got members of the staff that are sitting with family members and holding their hands and talking on the phone with other family members as somebody takes their last breath. That has to weigh on people far differently than what it ever has before. I don't know if in my lifetime, if there's ever been a time when I've been told I could not visit or sit with a loved one in their time of need. And we are in that time right now. We're in the time when people are having babies and they're, one of the parents can't be there, or the significant others. You don't have that support mechanism. Somebody's ill. You can't have somebody sitting vigil by your bedside or holding your hand and just keeping you company. I've never seen that. And I would hope that I never have to see this again in my lifetime, or anybody that's able to listen to this ever has to see that in their lifetime. It's unprecedented, and something I don't think that we were prepared for. And I think that if nothing else comes out of this tragedy, that we are prepared moving forward for anything that happens like this in our future. And you had asked, go ahead.
No, I'm just trying to get a better understanding of, how you can take, that emotional hit, but still be able to internalize that in a way that it doesn't taint your public policy positions. I know you personally, I know what kind of person you are. I know how, you put 100% of yourself into anything that you endeavor to do, and that includes family. So, I know personally, I don't know if I could be as balanced about that in looking at every factor that goes into this coronavirus situation in a way where it wouldn't throw off any public policy positions that I might have in terms of dealing with the virus.
Well, I'm a firm believer that God doesn't wish all things, but God wishes good out of all things. And even as tragic as this pandemic is, even as tragedy has struck my family, I recognize too that tragedy has struck hundreds of thousands of other family members, not only in the United States, but throughout our country. Globally, we have seen tragedy. I believe that we have a responsibility to take what we've learned out of a tragedy and grow from it and build off of that and make ourselves a better place. I was raised that you make the world a better place than where you found it. You leave it a better way. I raised my kids that way. I was raised that way. And I think that that's the only thing that has the ability to keep you somewhat balanced in this conversation. Just because, and I don't mean this in a minor sense by no means, but I suffered a loss, but hundreds of others have suffered losses too. And that doesn't mean that my job doesn't stop. People still have needs. The pandemic doesn't go away because it has taken a life. I still have an obligation to ensure that those folks that have entrusted me to do my job can still rely on me, regardless of the circumstance. And I do believe that it is my obligation now to continue the fight that I had been fighting prior to this, when it comes to the inadequacies in the chain of healthcare and the care that our nursing home residents are receiving, the lack of funding that has been put into those channels of care. For me, it's been something that I've been fighting for a long time. And I just find that it's heartbreaking that we had to have a tragedy the way that we've had it, for people to realize that we weren't doing it right.
Which,
I can't say though, and I want to make this very clear because I don't want my phone to ring after this airs and to say, oh my gosh, the healthcare workers aren't doing their job. That is not at all what I'm saying here. I'm saying that as a system, from the federal government all the way on down, we have not prioritized the care for our most vulnerable population. And I'm talking about our elderly folks, the folks that are in nursing homes or long-term care, the way that it should be. And that is something I've been fighting for years, and I'm going to continue to fight for it because that is just the right thing to do.
Well, that leads me to my next question, Michelle, because, you know, first time you can slide one by me, okay? But the second time, it's not going to happen. How, and I mean, is your thinking like we had better prepare for a second outbreak?
Absolutely. Yesterday I was on the phone with some some top-notch, medical professionals from Yale. We were on a conference call with them, and we were talking about a variety of things for a good hour and change. And I can't thank them enough for their time and their expertise and the honesty. And one of the questions I asked them very clearly was, do we expect this to revisit us in the fall? And they were, yes. This is not something that's going to go away overnight. We've been making great progress in slowing that curve and flattening it out. But with that progress has come great sacrifice. People have been, confined to their home for 6 weeks. They might be confined to their home for a few more weeks. But that doesn't mean that we walk out our door the day that we have been released and forget everything that we've gone through. We have to protect ourselves and our society for what will come back, because we still don't have an understanding on how to stop this. There's no vaccination for it. There's no necessarily specific treatment for this. And we know that the scientists and the folks that are working in the labs are working day and night around the clock to figure out a way to come up with any of those treatments and vaccinations. But as we all know, medical trials take time, and it's never going to be as fast as what we needed it to be.
Well, how do we practice social unity? How do we build the trust components back into the government? Because Paul Volcker, former Fed Reserve Chairman, who presided over the Great Recession, he said that the one thing that you need in a crisis is credibility. How,
Sure.
or is it even important to rebuild that modicum of trust between the people and the government? Because right now, especially in America, I think people have lost perspective on who the government is. We are the government. That's what makes our form of government so unique. So if things aren't hooking up, how can you, as a representative of the people, sew those threads together so that we create a fabric that represents the value of what America is all about?
I think that all starts local. You've heard me say it before. I'll continue saying it. I believe that there's a disconnect often between our local needs and our federal structure sometimes. But there's a reason for that. So I don't want everybody to go out there and say, oh my gosh, I should, hate on the people that are elected to represent me that are at the federal level. That is not what I'm saying at all. I believe that there's chains of government for a reason, local, state, federal, and then presidential. And I think that the only way that becomes successful chain of command, if you will, is if we listen to those folks in that level and in that order. And people that live in my community have to know that the information that I'm sharing with them is as honest and transparent as I know it to be. And I believe that that's my responsibility then, to believe that my governor is doing the same thing. And then we need the governors to believe that their, the commander in chief is doing the same thing. And I think that that's where our disconnect is. I believe the disconnect is between our commander in chief and the understanding of state government as a whole, and how the Constitution breaks down when our governors have a responsibility by Constitution to run their states.
Correct.
To the best that they see fit.
Correct.
And the federal government is there to sometimes advise, offer supports, but at the same time, there has to be a partnership and not a dictatorship. And I believe that we must realize that we are all in this together, that the decisions that are being made affect each and every one of us. You know, it does not weigh lightly on my heart that we've had to ask businesses to close, small businesses specifically. You know, I shake at the thought of the people that are struggling, that are self-employed, or the small businesses that are doing everything in their power to stay afloat in this time. No one asked for this, and I feel that they are taking the brunt of this, and that breaks my heart. And if we try to get business back to normal, I think we need to look at those folks first. How can we focus on small business, Main Street, the local guys? You know, I was reading an article today that the Targets and the Walmarts will be okay, but you take the mom and pop bakery down on Main Street and they're not going to be okay. We need to not forget them. But you asked me about unity and social unity. And I think that we're seeing that now, Jacque. I think that as I drive around town and we're all stuck in our homes, but I see red hearts on the doors and the windows and ribbons tied around trees, the thank yous, the generous donations of money and meals. I have been going back and forth with a gentleman who has delivered face masks to a variety of different places, and he wasn't asking for any shout out, but Jay Luciano, who has been making face masks, shields, the plastic shields, out of his home, and he's been delivering them around town. The folks like Dan's wife, who is making face masks for family members, and then for the cancer center, and then the people like Vinny's restaurant that is delivering meals, from restaurant to restaurant, or not restaurant to restaurant, but Vinny's restaurant is delivering meals from location to location every day. You have Da Capo's, who has laid off their employees, but they're feeding their employees meals, knowing that they're going through the same burden that everybody else is. People that are out there buying gift cards from a place that might be closed. All of these little things is helping that social unity. We have to realize that we are in this together. This doesn't affect only you or only me. This affects each and every one of us. And if one of us doesn't do our part, that's where we find the breakdown in the success.
But there is that component right now in our society which has a huge mistrust of our government and a huge mistrust of the information that's being reported from the coronavirus situation. It's not just a disagreement on an issue, it's a huge divide within the electorate of our country. And
Correct.
That is the aspect of the ethos that's being affected by this, because some people aren't as impacted by this, except for the fact that they hear about it all the time. So
right.
If you haven't had a loved one die, and I know a couple of cases where people have had a loved one or close one that's been affected by it, but they still seem to believe that there is an ulterior motive that's perpetuating this continuing. How, as a public official, do you deal with that level of mistrust?
I think at the end of the day, you can only put out the information that you have. As transparent, as rapidly and as accurate as been given to you by the experts. You will not see, for me, you will not see an opinion on whether or not I feel that our governor is right or wrong. I typically try to not take that argument. This is not about right or wrong when I'm talking, and I'm strictly talking local first. And I think that that's important. You know, I've been on conference call after conference call after conference call, ensuring I can get as much up-to-date information as possible, so I can give that information to our constituents, my constituents, neighbors, the folks that I see in the grocery store and at the gas station. You know, they rely on me to give them that information, and it is about the trust. If they trust me, then they would traditionally believe what I'm giving them. And I'm not saying that this is my opinion. This is the information that's come from the experts that have been given to me. You know, and for me, it's been a copy and paste. You know, the governor does a press release, or the departments give a press release, and I copy and paste that and I send that out. I would hope that folks have known me long enough to know that is the truth to the best that I know it. I think that the issue that you have is you are going to have naysayers on any subject across the board. You know, and if somebody is fortunate enough to not have been directly affected by this virus, then God bless them, because the tragedy that strikes with this is awful. I would just hope that we would all take a step back and realize again that it is not necessarily about you and me. It is about each and every one of us. And I believe that there will be an opportunity in November for people that have the mistrusts or the concerns or what have you. There is an election. And I believe that that's the only way that some of those things get resolved. I can't say that all of those decisions are made as informed as I would like them to be. And I think that across the country, if we talk about the virus specifically, it has affected each state differently. States have not had to deal with closures the way that New York or Connecticut or New Jersey or Pennsylvania has had to deal with closures, or Rhode Island or Massachusetts. You know, North Dakota might be very fortunate that they didn't have a ton of cases. But we also have to recognize that they live a little differently than we do. You know, they have beautiful countryside and often live 5 to 10 to 20 miles apart from each other, and a lot of open land, to where when you're in cities and people that are living closely together, you find that those viruses spread at a much more rapid rate because of our living situations. And, you know, those are all things that as we're making decisions or we're commenting, I think that we need to take ourselves out of our personal situation and look at everybody's situation as a whole. You know, it goes back to the question that you asked me about losing my father-in-law and being able to do my job. That's my personal situation. I have to take myself out of it and figure out how to continue to go on and look at everybody else's situation and do my job.
Well, that requires a lot of strength, a lot of character, and a lot of integrity, Michelle, which you have more than enough of, and which is why I so appreciate your service in the public position that you hold. But as we get ready to wrap up this interview, talk to us a little bit, Michelle, about some of the policies that you feel will be important going forward to make sure that that this thing doesn't have so much of an impact on us going forward.
You know, I think for me, my goal is to go back to work and as if I've stopped work, and I make that rhetorical. I haven't stopped working, but to go back and continue pushing for those policies that I have been pushing for before. Better pay for our direct care staff, especially in nursing homes and in other types of medical facilities, ensuring that we have a ratio of staff to resident, very similar in comparison to the ratios that we have for teacher to infant and toddler. We don't have that ratio here. We do a care ratio for per hour care, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.9 hours for nursing home residents that get a 1.9 hour of personal care a day. And I don't know of anybody that only cares for their person only 1.9 hours a day. I believe that that is inhumane and deplorable. And obviously that is a federal guideline that I would love us to see change. And I think that if we would have seen some of that change before this, a lot of the deaths that we have seen in our nursing homes and residential facilities for the elderly might have lessened, because they would have had the ability to possibly, spread out residents more, do more in-depth cleaning. I believe that the CDC puts a minimum standard of guidelines. That's the way I look at guidelines from the feds. There's a minimum standard of guidelines, and the CDC did a minimum standard of guidelines. I believe that we need to go above and beyond that minimum standard. I believe that once family members or guests were removed from nursing homes and hospitals and things like that, I would have envisioned that at that point was the minute that everybody should have been able to put on some type of facial covering, because all staff were still going in and out of the facilities and coming in to take care of those vulnerable populations where the families were removed from them. The problem that you have is we did not have enough PPE, the personal protection equipment, that we should have had. I don't believe that anybody was prepared for a pandemic to this magnitude. I also think that there were a lot of things that were possibly stockpiled in other areas. And I've heard, on some occasion, not on often occasion, that when people opened some masks, they were mold on them. Maybe not directly right here in town, but in a variety of different places. And I think that people stockpile things, but you don't recognize it. Oh yeah, look, those boxes that I had in the storage, we should go check them. And then when you actually need them, they're not fit to be used. There should be no reason why in the greatest country we should be scrambling for those pieces of equipment that protect our frontline folks that are protecting us. Those are just a few of the items for me that we need to do. I also think that as much as I am very impressed with the communication that we've had from our governor's office down to our municipalities, I think that there's things that we can learn from that as well, that we have an incredible emergency operations center right here in Torrington. Our fire chief Towie has done an incredible job organizing all of the local folks with Chief Baldwin at the police department and the folks at, our area public health and first responders and all of that. We have that at different levels at the state. I think that we need to revisit how those communications work statewide and ensure that there are policies driven for our emergency operations centers and first responders from their experiences in this, and listen to them. They are the ones that are out there doing that job. We need to hear where they feel we have inadequacies and develop policies from that. I don't claim to be a doctor or a medical professional, and so my job is to rely on them to let us know what we need to do better to support them. God forbid this does reoccur. We've seen viruses come around in a variety of different generations, Spanish flu and, bird flu and all of those different pandemics. We should learn from them and build from them going forward. We've learned from this one. The problem is this one seems to be much smarter than our labs, because they still don't understand how it spreads. Do we need to change our filtration systems when we talk about our HVACs? Do we need to change the visitation policies? We know that as we move forward and we go back to work, we're probably going to see the need of some facial coverings and things for quite a while. Do we need to lessen the amount of children in a classroom? Those are the policies that I think that we're going to have to look at, and how we can make everybody safe. And I think first and foremost, people need to feel safe, and they need to not be afraid. And that's an issue that I think going forward is going to have to find a settling balance. You know, we're going to constantly have those folks that are going to be the naysayers. They're going to always have an opinion about it. But I think the majority of the folks recognize that this is serious. You know, the definition of serious weighs differently for each one of us. But the policies that are going to come out of this must be from those on the front line that have been doing the job, the most difficult jobs. And we need to listen to them. We need to take what they're saying and we need to listen to them. I do not believe that a medical professional that says, I don't have the right equipment and I'm being put in harm's way is a lie. I don't believe that if they're telling me to wear a facial covering not because I could be having it, but because I could be an asymptomatic carrier and I could be giving a virus to somebody else, I have a responsibility to protect not only myself, but my neighbors and my community. We need to do that. And if there's policies put in place that the medical professionals have said are most important, I think we have an obligation to follow those rules. And I don't mean rules in a dictative sense. I mean rules in a compassionate sense.
Well, when it comes to compassionate sense, my friend, you have it down lock and key. And we so appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to reconnect with us here on City Views and give our audience an update on what's going on out there with the coronavirus situation. But before we leave off the air, I want to make sure that we give a shout out to the staff and production team here at City Views who are just itching and clawing to get back in the studio. But in the meantime, yeah, because it's been way too long. But we want to thank Catherine Pezzi and Dan Morrison, Daniel Yannick, Tracy Rowe, Meg Capon, Stephanie Barksdale, as always, Doug Harrell there at Altice, and my co-host for the show, Melissa Crofts and Weibo. Thank you guys so much for everything that you do for City Views and for the community. We really appreciate it. And also,
and Jacque, I was just can I interrupt you really quick?
Sure, go ahead.
I was gonna say for folks that are still looking to get information, daily information, my website at the Capitol, my email is michelle.cook@cga.ct.gov. And I also am giving daily updates on my state Facebook page as well as my personal Facebook page. So there is no confusion for folks. So it's State Representative Michelle Cook on Facebook and Michelle Lonas Cook for personal. I'm giving those updates every day that they're coming down if people need those as well. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. But I do also, I want to see, it's my new mask here.
I heard a nice young lady made you a customized mask.
Yes, she did. It's very nice, isn't it?
She did a wonderful job. My masks were imported from St. Louis, where my mom made them.
It's about that time.
Yes. So definitely want to thank the crew for everything that they do. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we want to encourage you to be safe and be sane during this downtime, especially as things start to open up. Don't forget those techniques and those tools that we can all use to make sure that we're not only keeping ourselves safe, but that we're taking the right steps for our community as well. So we're all in this together until it's time to rise again. In the meantime, we'll see you back with more right here on City Views. I'm Jacque Williams. Peace out.